It's the final episode of Nitro before the first WCW pay-per-view in 16 years. And you know what these go-home episodes of Nitro are like. Anything could happen. Hello and welcome to part 3 of my Total Extreme Wrestling WCW playthrough. I'm Kev, and coming up tonight we have the final episode of Monday Nitro before our first pay-per-view of the new era of WCW. Don't start saying new era in this, Kev. That's a WWE thing. But it's the first pay-per-view, New Blood Rising, this weekend. But first, we have a whole episode of Nitro to get through. And it kicks off with Wade Barrett, Ryback, Justin Gabriel and Courtney Rush all in the ring together, announcing that they're reforming or forming a slightly different version of the Nexus. Because why not? We've got factions forming all over the place here in WCW. Kev likes a faction, and Wade Barrett and Ryback are both right up there as main eventers here in WCW. Pairing those two together is going to be awesome, and it also allows us to give a bit of a push to Justin Gabriel, who's wasted down in the lower mid-card, and Courtney Rush, who, this is why she's not Rosemary. She was always going to be part of this. We need her to be a proper wrestler, because she's going to be in the Nexus, and she's going to be cool. So we debut Justin Gabriel. Probably shouldn't have put him on a fan favourite gimmick, because we've made him a heel. But fan favourite on a heel gimmick is very good, apparently, which is an odd one. The crowd, the angle got the show off well, the crowd got hotter, and it also pushes forward a couple of our storylines involving Ryback and Wade Barrett. We get a C+ overall. That's not a bad start to the show. Happy with that. And then... okay, so this is the lowest rating we've had for a match so far. This show should not have made it onto Nitro. Make a note that you need to have at least one. You can't have two jobbers against each other. It ends badly. I wanted to give Mark Sherman a push because he shows up on the next big thing lists for me as someone who should be capable. If we handle him right, we could turn him into a star. But we put him up against, I mean, he's an enhancement talent on auto push, as is Matt Riviera, and putting the two of them together. This is why we need Thunder, but we're still like 2 months away from being able to have Thunder. I think Mark Sherman's push might have to wait until Thunder is a thing, because this was an unmitigated disaster, the like of which will never be repeated. And that's not much better. We have a ladies tag team match. It's the Beautiful People versus Melina Perez and Brooke. Spoiler alert, this was going to be Melina and Gail Kim and be a springboard for a Gail Kim push, but Gail Kim is injured. She's going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. So Brooke steps into her place, which means Melina picked up the win, and I guess I'll just give her Gail Kim's push, because why not? So Melina is going to get a bit of a shove forward, which makes sense because she's got John Morrison paired with her anyway, and he's already a main eventer, so the two of those working together shouldn't be too much of a disaster. And the Beautiful People, it's not going well for them so far, is it? I think between the two of them, they've lost every match since arriving in WCW. Silly old Beautiful People, eh? And finally, goodness me, we get a decent rating. And brilliantly, it's for the contract signing for the women's titles. So we get Mia Yim, Awesome Kong's manager, Gregory Helms, all in a segment with Eric Bischoff. So they all get a massive bit of Bischoff goodness. And we book our women's title for the pay-per-view. We get a B rating on the segment overall, and that's got to be good for what should end up being 2 of our top female talents. So that went well. I'm on board with that. And not so well, we get Tyler Bate again. We're going to keep pushing him because I still like him. Tyler Bate versus Robbie E. We don't actually get to a proper finish because Tyler Bate wins by disqualification when Pete Dunne runs down and attacks him. Both Bate and Robbie E getting D-minuses for the segment. A D- overall. We're obviously pushing forward our Bate versus Dunne storyline as well. And yeah, it seems it's not possible for Tyler Bate to have a match without Pete Dunne injecting himself into it. And goodness me, if Eric Bischoff hasn't noticed that as well. And in fact, he's fed up of them just wrestling each other because they don't like each other. He needs to give them a reason to fight each other. Now, they're not ready for the US title picture yet, but there's this TV title that we used to have that hasn't been used for anything lately. Now, ordinarily, I'd give you the match right now on TV, but Tyler Bates just had a match and you attacked him, Pete. So I suppose through rascalous behaviour, you've managed to earn yourself a spot on the pay-per-view. So it's going to be Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne at the pay-per-view. We get a B for the segment because Eric Bischoff's booking it. Paul Heyman is Pete Dunne's manager. And again, we've got two of our talents that we're trying to push involved in a rating that's going to give them a nice push. Things are starting to come together. This is a good sign. We get a B on that segment as well. And then we have AJ Lee, who I still don't really know what to do with because she turned up late, other than the fact that I keep having her beat people. Beating Courtney Rush, aka the person who's just joined the Nexus. I probably should have had the new faction go over. But AJ Lee picks up the win. Slightly better in-ring performance. And we get a D+ overall for a women's match, which isn't bad at all. And then we get a match, Jay Lethal versus Damien Sandow. They had a tag team. They were both involved in a tag team match last week. It was Jay Lethal and MVP versus Damien Sandow and Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes picking up the win over Lethal. And they were then booked into a US title match for the pay-per-view. So now we're just going to split the teams apart and have them wrestle against each other this week as well, just to keep this little four-way feud thing going on, this US title storyline that we've got in play. So it's Jay Lethal versus Damien Sandow. But Cody Rhodes comes down to the ring midway through, distracts Jay Lethal, but Lethal still manages to pick up the win over Sandow. It wasn't for the US title, but he picks up a win regardless. Jay Lethal only getting a D+, Sandow a C-, and we get a C- for the match, which isn't a disaster, but isn't as good as I was hoping for from our US title picture. And then we have our world title contract signing. So Bischoff and Heyman out to the ring again. The two of them, they're putting some hours in trying to get this new WCW off the ground. Heyman obviously there again because this time he's there representing Ethan Carter III. And it's Rey Mysterio and EC3 signing their contract for their world title match at New Blood Rising. And we get a B+ for the segment overall. And our world title storyline continues to gain heat. One of those two is going to be the first WCW champion in 16 years. Now we get the other half of our split up US title feud thing, and it's MVP versus Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes wins, but after interference from both Nat and Nick Jackson, aka the Young Bucks. They're coming in interfering on Cody Rhodes' behalf. Surely there's not going to be yet another faction here in WCW. They would have been here a bit sooner if Kenny Omega was willing to discuss terms. But just like CM Punk, not interested. We're too small for him. So we're going to have to do our own little mini low-fat version of Bullet Club, led by Cody Rhodes with the Young Bucks. And if we can sign anyone else from Bullet Club, we'll certainly add them into the mix. But we have both Nexus and Bullet Club announcing themselves onto the WCW scene right now. And why is that advancing our tag titles? Oh, because the Young Bucks came out. I understand. We get a C for the segment. And then we have EC3 versus Bobby Lashley in a rematch from last week. EC3 beat Lashley. Lashley not very happy about it. EC3 still goes on to the pay-per-view, but Lashley wanted a rematch. And this time, it's not a clean victory for EC3 because we get interference from his stablemate, Ted DiBiase Jr. and Jack Swagger. He does pick up the win, but it's very heavily assisted by his stables. C+ for EC3, a C for Lashley. And again, our world title storyline advances. We get a C+ on the section. This is a good episode of Nitro. This is going well. And we end the show with a tag match. It is our new Nexus, folk, not the new Nexus, just a new version of the Nexus. The new Nexus, as we all know, was rubbish. This is just the Nexus. Wade Barrett and Ryback taking on Rey Mysterio and a partner of his choosing. He chose John Morrison, not just because he was the only main eventer who didn't have a match tonight, because they're big buddies, innit? And Mysterio does pick up the win, pinning Wade Barrett after a 619 into a flying splash. Still not getting really good matches out of Rey Mysterio, which is a concern. Only a C+, but everyone else coming in with solid Cs as well. It advances. 3 different storylines. We've got our world title storyline. We've got our Lashley and Ryback storyline. We've got our John Morrison, Wade Barrett storyline. There's all sorts of stuff going on here. We get a C- for the match. And as a show, a B-. That's the best episode of Nitro we've had as a go-home show for a pay-per-view. And we had an F in there early on. So that that goes down as a bit of a result. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of the show, what you would do differently, where you would take things at the pay-per-view, who's going to win all the titles, and what direction do you take WCW in post pay-per-view. If you've enjoyed that, please make sure you pop a like on there for me. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more. And thank you very much for watching.